So the Miami Hurricanes, they gave Pitt a path to the ACC championship. A few hours later, Pitt was like, well, we don't want it. You can take it right back.
You are Locked On ACC, your daily podcast on the Atlantic Coast Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Shout out to the everydayers, and thank you so much for making Locked On ACC your first listen and your first watch today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. On this Monday episode of Locked On ACC, we'll talk about the ACC Players of the Week in football for Week 11. Mike Norvell is getting an early start on his house cleaning. Season's not over, but heads are already rolling in Tallahassee. But Kenton, going to the games over the weekend, neither of us predicted this to happen. I know a lot of people will say you should have seen these coming. We'll talk about Miami losing to Georgia Tech. It was really, really ugly in a lot of ways for Miami, and a lot of hot takes are coming out of that. And then Pitt losing for the second straight time. Now, Kenton, we knew that they had some tough games remaining, but Virginia was not the one that we thought. That was not the one we expected to beat Pitt. But let's start with Miami. They traveled to Atlanta. Miami entering that game at number 4. Maybe thinking about a little bit of payback from last year. They lost to Georgia Tech at home. Now, Kenton, we've known for most of the season anyway, that Miami's defense has been problematic. In this case, they were going up against a Georgia Tech offense with a starting quarterback basically with one arm, the throwing shoulder, for Haynes King, who did start the game, couldn't throw. Like, he was basically there as a runner, and they used Aaron Philo, the true freshman, to come on and throw passes when needed. Georgia Tech, they also, Jamal Haynes, who tried to come back from injury, had a good first drive, but then couldn't play after that. They're down to former walk-ons at running back, a one-armed quarterback, and they still proceed to gash Miami for 271 rushing yards. Miami couldn't stop them. Miami couldn't stop them not only from scoring, but Miami couldn't stop them from draining the clock, because it was clear Georgia Tech's strategy, and it played it out to a T, was let's keep Miami's offense off the field. We just keep running. They had a 10-minute, 45-second drive in the second quarter, so they limited Miami's possessions. Miami had no answers, and now, I remember something, Kenton, you've been talking for weeks about Cam Ward's plot armor. He did have the opportunity to lead a game-winning drive. Instead of the touchdown, this time he fumbled.
I want to talk about these things. I'm going to reverse engineer it. I'm going to talk about everything that you talked about in order from the things you said last to the things you said first here. Let's start off with Cam Ward's plot armor. He became a victim of his own success. He became a victim of the fact that how many times have we seen Cam Ward do that this year, where he just kind of moseys around back there. He figures out something. He's eluding guys. He's taking his time. He's okay. All right, I got it. I've gotten away from the rushers now. I can go find somebody downfield, instead of doing what most quarterbacks would have to do in those situations and say, you know what? It's second down. I can throw it away. We're 3rd and 10, plenty of time left. But that Cam Ward magic, he started to become mythologized into it. He started to believe his own hype and read his own press clippings, or not even that so much as this is kind of always who he's been. He just hasn't learned that, like, hey, know when to just, hey, this play is dead, we're cooked, and live with that. Because he's so talented, he's so supremely talented, he can always make that play, which is a big reason why he wasn't seen as NFL ready coming into this year, and why even going into this next draft where the quarterback class, I mean, they're weaker than those $1 drinks at Chili's. Yet we are still going to see a situation where he's not viewed as a consensus QB1 because of that. You can't do that in the NFL. When those rushers are making $30, $40 million a year to come after you, you can't do that, mosey around thing. And then the ability to run the ball, and how Georgia Tech just beat them up physically and beat them up running the ball. Has Georgia Tech not done that all year? Has that not been who they have been for the majority of the year? Don't get me wrong. Haynes King has played well, but the majority of the year, what they have said is, we're going to be the most physical team on this field, and that's just what it is. That's been their calling card. That's been where they've hung their hats all year long. So I'm a little perplexed and confused by people looking at this team like, man, they just did something that was crazy and that was different. I just didn't think that they would have that much success in terms of keeping Miami's offense off the field. I thought at some point in time that Miami defense is going to bow its neck and say, you know what, we've been throughout this game, but we will not break. And credit to them, they did at the tail end to put Miami in a position to win. But, Dono, the same things that are ugly in the win are going to be ugly in the loss. The running defense, the gap responsibility, the tackling, all of those things have been bad all year. These aren't things for Miami. They've been so gap sound all year. Whatever happened today? It's been who they are all year, and it just got exposed in a major way. But with that being said, this is still a very good team. This is still a very good team. They're just not a perfect team. That's all.
Right. Well, and I think it's clear to me, and I've been asking the question for weeks, not only on this show, but also on Locked On Canes. By the way, I host Locked On Canes. Kenton Gibbs hosts Locked On Wolfpack. Is there any sort of a second wind for Miami's defense to catch? But yeah, I think 10 games in, they are who they are. And now Miami can win more games, but they're gonna have to outscore teams. And at least I feel like the version of Miami's offense that we saw last weekend, a lot of that's fixable because we've seen them play a lot better than the 23 points that they scored last weekend. So it's really up to Miami's offense, and it's up to Cam Ward to carry the defense. Now, coming out of that Miami game, so Georgia Tech, they beat Miami 28-23 in a noon game. They're tearing down the goalposts at Georgia Tech, all the stuff you should do after, upsetting a top 5 team. And then Kenton, for a matter of hours, Miami lost control of their own destiny. Miami was no longer in a spot where they could win their next 2 games now and be into the ACC championship game. They lost control of that. And, a team standing in their way were the Pitt Panthers. All Pitt had to do was, take care of business at home against what has not been a very good Virginia team in recent weeks. Pitt just had to, bounce back from their tough loss last weekend. Pitt gets upset at home against Virginia. We'll talk a little bit about that game, Kenton. So, I guess, Cam Ward didn't lose his plot armor. It just the plot armor became 4D. It became 4-dimensional. So, he lost a game, and then Pitt, and something I want to talk about in that Pitt-Virginia game, maybe Virginia, they may have still gone on to win the game anyway, but did you see what happened with 6 minutes left in the game when the referees gave them a 5th down?
Yes.
Did you see that?
Down. That was insane. That was insane. And again, when I say ACC officials are terrible, people keep telling me every group of officials is bad. Every group of officials is bad. Who the hell is 5th down bad? Yeah. Who the hell is 5th? And let me give credit to the Who's. Virginia did their thing. Virginia did what they had to do to win. Shout out to Tony Elliott. Shout out to Tony Calandra. Shout out to that group. They did what they needed to do to win. And this is not taking away anything from them. However, how long have we said ACC officials are bottom of the barrel? Have we seen any Big Ten games where we're looking at 5th down?
No.
Have we seen any SEC games? Big 12, anyone? They're getting mad about an obvious holding call. They got ADs calling out the officials over stuff like that. You know what they aren't saying? Hey, in the Holy War, BYU got a 5th down. I don't know how it happened. Apparently, the officials blew the whistle, but they weren't in position. And when you blow the whistle, it signifies that your ass is in position.
And plus, I watched that play probably 20 times because, somebody put it out as a video on X where, it's like a 20-second play and then it loops over and over. I watched it 20 times. I didn't notice anybody like completely out of position. Like like you said, if you blow. So what happened for the folks who didn't see it was it was 4th down and 1. Virginia with the football. It was 6 minutes left. They had, I think, a 2-point lead at that point. So they were ahead. Maybe they would have still won the game. Who knows? But they're going forward on a 4th and 1. They get stuffed. It was clear they got stuffed. But then the officials were like, hold on, we were not in position. Repeat the down. So they played the 4th down over again, essentially a 5th down. Virginia, they get the mulligan. They convert it the second time. Pat Narduzzi, I thought his head was going to explode, how mad the Pitt coach was on the sideline.
As it should have been. As it should have been. Let me ask you this, Dono. If that play goes for a touchdown, you think they call it back and say we weren't in position? I don't. I don't see.
I would like to think they would, but
and let's take it a step further, shall we?
Yeah.
Why, under God's green earth, are you blowing the whistle if you are not in position? How many times have we seen refs stand over the ball for an egregious amount of time, where a team has to burn the timeout, but it's like, hey, it's part of the rules. They got to be in position. That's just what it is. That's just what it is. Normally, it's a substitution thing where refs are standing over the ball waiting and all that. But in this situation, if all the referees are not in position, do what you normally do. Stand over that football. Hey, fellas, relax. We got to get the back judge right. We got to get the line judge right. We got to get the umpire right. Hey, fellas, relax. And then let the play roll. I feel terribly for all parties involved. For Virginia, because they're not getting the respect that they rightfully deserve for winning this game and for inching closer and closer to bowl eligibility. For Pitt, because you earned that stop. We could all say if the stop was awarded, it had it not been. We don't live in a world where it was rewarded, even though they earned it, even though they did their thing. So, that's the thing. The ACC at large, I feel bad for all of us, except the damn officials and the administrators who would continue to allow these officials to come out and be an absolute clown show, because this is what we look like nationally.
Yeah.
This is what we are putting out. This is the product that we're putting out at a national scale. It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing.
Well, speaking of embarrassing, Florida State is now 1-9. They, I didn't stay up for the entire finish. I think they got mercy ruled by Notre Dame. Like I'm pretty sure they had to stop it like a little league game because it was getting completely out of hand. Their loss to Notre Dame was so bad. The final score was 52-3. It was almost as bad as that 63-3 in the Orange Bowl last year. It was so bad that Mike Norvell finally realized, I got to fire some people. Like I can't take the same staff into week 12. So we'll talk about what's going on in Tallahassee. You want to keep it locked here, my friends. We're only getting started on this brand new episode of Locked On ACC. We're only getting started on FanDuel. Guys, we've had an awesome time all season long. Betting money, winning games, winning bets on these ACC games, NFL games. Guys, NFL fans, get ready to tackle the season with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. Yeah, just you could pick a game with a gigantic spread, bet the favorite, you win that easy bet, you've got $150 in bonus bets. It's like magic. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more right on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. Again, you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Thank you so much for making this episode of Locked On ACC your first listen and your first watch today. For your second listen, second and third listen, make sure you check out Kenton and Grayson on Locked On Wolfpack. Check me out on Locked On Canes. Much like this show, these other shows are available free wherever you get your podcasts, free on YouTube. We're all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So, Kenton, we had a discussion early last week with Brian Smith from Locked On Seminoles. Now, listen, the head coach is the one who's ultimately responsible for the results, responsible for his staff. Mike Norvell is failing majestically this season. He's failing. He's the king of failure this year. You go from 13-0 start last year to 1-9 this year. Now, obviously, Norvell has built up some equity. Past couple of seasons were excellent years for Florida State. But the other problem is, after extending him after last season, it would cost $63.8 million to fire him and to buy him out. So that's not really a realistic goal for Florida State. Norvell, instead, it sounds like his directive has been, you've got to revamp your coaching staff because what you have is not cutting it. So after that Notre Dame debacle, Mike Norvell has fired offensive coordinator and offensive line coach Alex Atkins. He's fired defensive coordinator Adam Fuller. The defense was honestly not that bad, but and he's fired receivers coach Ron Dugans. The receiver corps has been an embarrassment this year. All drops left and right. I feel kind of bad for Alex Atkins because you remember he had to serve a suspension for a recruiting NIL violation. I kind of felt like he was taking a hit from Mike Norvell, and then, hey, your reward is a few months later, you're fired.
Well, Dono, you and I talked about this off air, but the fall guy is always going to be the fall guy. Yeah, that's right. The fall guy for the NIL violation is also going to be the fall guy for 1-9. That's just the way that this thing works out because, again, there's a complete lack of accountability throughout this team and throughout this program. There's a complete and utter lack of pride in this team and throughout this program. This, I understand. And I am always the first person to tell people when players sit out bowl games that are not playoff games, have no relevance to championship and all that, I get it, especially guys who stand to make tens of millions of dollars just by, hey, stay in a similar health condition that you are in right now. Stay in that for a couple more months. You're at the finish line. I get that. The level of opt-outs that we saw against Georgia was unprecedented. We saw guys that are on this team opt out.
That's right.
That was an actual thing that happened. So, there's it to me, again, it reeks to the high heavens of we're above this, we're better than this, we don't need to do this, when you could have just shown up and whooped some tail. You could have shown up and said, you know what? Y'all can keep us out. Y'all can deny us what's rightfully ours all day until the cows come home. But you know what we're going to do? We're going to show the world. We're going to put some on. Their whole theme of last year was unconquered, right? That was their whole thing, unconquered. Why not go out there and prove it one last time? Why not truly finish unconquered? Why not? Anywho, that seeped into this year, and that it's, again, it just seemed like they believed teams were supposed to roll over because they were Florida State, not we're going to beat you into submission because we're Florida State. There was a soft mentality going throughout this team, and I know Atkins is the fall guy, but honestly, I can't be too mad at firing him. Look at how the offensive line performed.
I mean, the offensive line is terrible. Yeah, no.
They were so bad. It's tough to say, oh, he deserves to give his job. On what premise? Yeah. On what grounds does he deserve it? So, all in all, this was just a terrible season from the team, and Norvell is getting a jump on things, but I will tell you this. I would be shocked and appalled to see this team be any better than 6 wins next year based on what we're seeing right now. I get it. Everybody's saying, oh, you can turn around a lot. Look at Cignetti. Oh, you could, turn around. Yeah, you could turn around a lot. Look at Norvell. I'm sorry to tell you, generally, winning is a building process. It is a progression that you get better and better by the year. To fall off a cliff like this, that speaks to a very deep cultural problem.
Well, and I'm going to be very interested to see when they find, permanent replacements for these coaches, and there could be others at the end of the season who lose their jobs because you can't literally fire everybody in November because you need to have some coaches left on the staff. So there could be other changes that come in the offseason because I've seen rumors out there like a bunch of former Florida State players like Antonio Cromartie is campaigning to to get a job on the staff. Obviously, anytime, and it's fun to do. Like anytime you've got vacancies on your coaching staff, fans are going to dream big. They're going to start, linking big name assistant coaches to maybe leaving the programs they're at to come for a job at Florida State. I just wonder. So it's really up to the Florida State administration to really put their weight and a convincing vote of confidence behind Mike Norvell, because they at least need to make people believe he's not on the hot seat, whether he is or not. And it's also up to Mike Norvell, because he's got to be very, very convincing and charismatic through this hiring process. Because when you look at, again, a head coach, if the perception is, if he doesn't turn this around, they're going to maybe fire him as soon as it's more affordable to do so. How do you attract a blue chip staff of assistant coaches if they're worried about hitching their wagon to somebody who may not be around for a lot longer? So it's really, Florida State needs to, whether it's true or not true, at least create the illusion that you believe in Norvell and he is absolutely the guy to turn this back around.
Well, it's two things that Florida State has in their favor that would allure, or that would be alluring to any coach: money and status. At the end of the day, if you are the coach that is responsible for taking Florida State from where they are right now offensively to, let's not even say a great offense, let's say top 35 in the nation next year, you've worked miracles. You've turned water into wine and parted the Red Sea at that point because of what they look like right now. And then on top of that, you're not doing this at, you're not doing this at Western Carolina. You get what I'm saying? You're not doing this at, with all due respect to this school, Saginaw Valley State. You're doing this at Florida State, where you are now like, oh my God, this is real deal big boy football. What head coaching job are you not up for if you go as one of their coordinators and do amazing things? What job are you not up for? Who does not say, hey, we need him at our school if you go and turn Florida State around? And mind you, turn around really back to who they were 2 years ago is what you're doing. You're not trying to turn around the team that's like, historically, we've been the Island of Misfit Toys University. We've got one double-digit win season ever. We don't have any championships. You are being asked to make a premier brand premier again. If you can do that, if you can make Knowles football relevant like it was a short 12 months ago, you're going to be, you'll get to write your ticket. When Lincoln Riley gets fired, hey, you may be the guy to replace him. When Matt Rule, hey, you may be the guy to replace him. And, I'm not saying that those guys are getting fired, but just saying, when Deion decides to move on wherever he moves on to, you will be the guy that will be first in line. So while this is a objective poop show, the reality is this is a salvageable situation because you're at one of the richest universities and you're at a university with a ton of exposure.
I mean, theoretically a rich university, but it's like, and I guess this is the sort of thing you would need to get like new booster money behind, because they're already spending a lot of money on legal fees. They're involved in many lawsuits, and they're currently undergoing renovations at Doak Campbell Stadium, which I'm sure are not cheap. So it's there's going to be some fat checks that'll have to be cut here to bring in a grade A staff. We'll continue our conversations on the other side. We've got the ACC Players of the Week for Week 11, plus the AP rankings. Not looking so great for the ACC right now. You guys want to keep it locked right here. We're not done yet on this brand new episode of Locked On ACC. The Game Time app. It's the only ticket app that Kenton and I use, because we know we're getting the best deals on tickets, and the prices get lower on the Game Time app the closer you get to the event. So if you're a procrastinator like me, you actually get rewarded for that for once, because most aspects of life do not reward procrastination. Game Time app is different. Guys, there's a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks on the Game Time app filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. The features on Game Time are game-changing. I love the all-in pricing feature. It's going to show you the total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout. I love getting a panoramic view from my seat in the app before I buy, And the Game Time lowest price guarantee, if you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. Thank you for making Locked On ACC your first listen and your first watch today. Alex Dono from Locked On Canes, Kenton Gibbs from Locked On Wolfpack. All right, Kenton, Miami previously ranked in the top 4, lost to a not very good Georgia Tech team, which gave the ACC a big hit in the rankings. Let me share my screen here. Nice advertisement they hit us up with there. All right, so the new Associated Press rankings, Oregon stands pat, remain undefeated. They stay at number 1. Ohio State moves up the spot to number 2. Georgia lost, so they fell out of the top 5 as well. Texas moves up 2 spots to number 3. Penn State moves up 2 spots. They're back in the top 5 at number 4. Indiana unbeaten. They're now number 5. Tennessee 6th. BYU 7th. Notre Dame 8. They just, mercy ruled Florida State. Alabama moves up 2 spots to 9. Ole Miss at 10. Georgia drops to 11. Miami drops now to number 12. Unfortunately, you're in the ACC, you lose a game. This is not a bye week like it is when SEC teams lose a game. They penalize you for that. Boise State at 13. Now, SMU didn't even play last week. They didn't play, and they drop a spot to number 14. Where is the justice? Let's see the rest of these. Texas A&M, Army 16. Clemson moves up 2 spots to number 17. They got a bounce-back win against Virginia Tech. Good win on the road. Colorado 18. Washington State, Kansas State, LSU. Louisville moves up 3 spots. Mizzou, Tulane. Pittsburgh drops out of that top 25. So that's what we're... Am I back? I lost myself on there for a second. So that's what we're looking for now. Any hot takes on the top 25, Kenton? It's very apparent. I think the team that wins the ACC is going to be the only team in the college football playoff, whether that's Miami or someone else, because Miami cannot lose for a second time and expect to get into the CFP.
I don't understand why they can't. Somebody explain it to me like I'm a 5th grader. Dono, can you scroll back up for me? Can you scroll back up for me into that top 10? Let me see that top 10 just one more again, shall we?
Sure.
Okay. Now we have Ole Miss in that top 10, correct?
Yes, with 2 losses.
They have 2 losses, and I believe they don't exactly have the cakiest of cakewalks going forward here. What am I saying by saying that, right? I'm saying, well, wait a minute now. Let's be very clear and very honest about this thing. If I'm looking around and I'm saying, what's going on? What could be? Who could these teams be in terms of what the rest of their season looks like? And I'm sorry, not Ole Miss, but there are multiple teams going forward in the SEC that they're going to have 2-3 losses here.
Yeah,
if not more.
Yeah.
But that's the part that blows me. Why can't Miami have 2 losses and get in? I'm very confused. Very confused. If Miami's only losses are to Georgia Tech and to let's say SMU
in the title game,
that's terrible to you. That's not good enough for a playoff bid. Like, what are we doing here? What are we doing? Where's Bama at in this thing?
They are number 9 now.
How many losses do they have, Donna?
2.
And one of them was to a team that lost to Georgia State, correct?
Yes, it was. But that was a quality win because they're bowl eligible. Or quality loss, sorry.
And yet, what? SMU's loss isn't good enough? Because why isn't SMU in that conversation? Up there in that 10-9
They're in the ACC. Why
you're right. You're right that the ACC may be a 1-bid league, but I struggle to understand it because, again, Notre Dame's resume against SMU what we got going on. Notre Dame's resume against Miami, what we got going on. Yeah. It's the old Catholics versus convicts all over again, as if the team that was deemed the Catholics didn't also have multiple convicts on their team. What we got going on. And trust me, I've been in a version of that in the city of Detroit. What we got going on. I just want to know. I want to understand this because it's so confusing to me that the ACC doesn't get the love. And this is why, again, I say Jim Phillips needs to be out there in the streets, marching, screaming, and rioting for the ACC, because this disrespect is so blatant and so flagrant that there are going to be SEC teams that benefit from not going to the conference championship.
Yeah, no, it is pitiful. All right, what's not pitiful? ACC Players of the Week for Week 11. I'm happy for Fernando Mendoza. You know, Cal picks up their first ACC win. They beat Wake Forest in a shootout, 46-36. Mendoza threw for a career high 385 yards in the win. Kyle Robichaux from Boston College, they had a nice win over Syracuse. He had 198 yards rushing, 2 touchdowns. Aronde Gadsden the second in that same game, despite a loss. He had 114 receiving yards for Syracuse on 9 catches. On the defense, Jonas Sanker deserved defensive back of the week for Virginia. What a player he is. Instrumental in that victory over Pitt. Him and the 5th down were instrumental in that win. Anything else? Anything from that group stand out to you? Again, for me, I'm happy to see Mendoza and I'm happy to see Cal. I know our guy Lawrence Ross is happy. They finally won an ACC game.
Hey, shout out to Cal for their first ever ACC win. We gotta have Cal superfan Lawrence Ross back on because it really is. It really had been a long time coming. But Sanker and the Hoos, who are they? The boys from UVA. Let me tell you something. That was a hell of a win by them, man. That was a hell of a win. It was a gutty win. It was a gritty win. And when you think of Tony Elliott, you don't think of a defensive guy. You don't think of a guy that's going to win a rock fight type of guy. That's not his temperament. He's an offensive coordinator turned head coach. He's not a guy that you think of, hey, my teams are just going to be that, we're just going to fight you tooth and nail for every inch. And yet that's what they did. That's how they came out with the win here. So that's big time, man. That's big time. Got to give them their love. Got to give them their props. Shout out to UVA here.
I love it. Well, shout out to Kenton Gibbs. Awesome show as always. Shout out to everybody who tuned in. Thank you for making Locked On ACC your first listen and your first watch. We're going to have the squad coming your way later this week. We'll take a look ahead to week number 12 on our next episode. So make sure to hit that thumbs up button and subscribe to Locked On ACC on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your pods. And we'll talk to you again tomorrow on another episode of Locked On ACC. We're part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.